Hello everyone, this is Team Web3. This week I'm in Bali, next week in Thailand, last week I was in Japan, and I'm learning a lot about things that are happening in all these different local markets. And this week I want to share with you a few articles and a few thoughts about Japan, South Korea, and also things that are happening here in Indonesia. An interesting event in Japan which happened last week. There was a job fair organized in the Metaverse. There were about 2,000 students attending that job fair and 179 participating companies. I think this shows really an interesting potential of the Metaverse, which is, it's not only about gaming and brands selling like fancy and expensive NFTs, it's also really a tool to put younger people and give them opportunities which maybe they didn't have before. So here we can see in the article that they're talking about the fact that the job fair maybe happens in Tokyo or in some big cities, and a lot of students are around the country and they cannot show up to these fairs. So using the Metaverse, it's very interesting that these people can show up, they can ask a lot of questions. The fact that the avatars are anonymous can also create additional opportunities maybe for people that are more introverts in the real world or things like that. So I think that was very interesting. Another thing about Japan, also there is an article in my newsletter about the regulators and what is happening in Japan right now. The regulators really worked really hard last year already to talk about regulating NFTs in Japan, DAOs, also stablecoins, and all this is supposedly going to go into place in around April, May. So I think a lot of brands and a lot of companies are really preparing themselves for this new wave of technology, this new wave of regulations, which will make things quite safe for the customer in Japan, but I think will really open a lot of doors. So for example, we could see that the Toyota company itself is organizing an hackathon internally, focusing really on Web3 applications. Toyota has hundreds of thousands of employees there, so they're really testing things internally first, and we can of course think how they're going to expand in the future, maybe with their customers in Japan and even beyond. So this week in Japan, again, there are a lot of things coming out. I know I talk a lot about Japan, but this is really a hot market where I go pretty often. So yeah, here you go. Next off, I think a very interesting story about an application and a company called Lyka, Lyka. They actually went live as an app, like a social media app in the Philippines about 2 years ago. And every time you engage, you post something, you like something, you were earning tokens. They're called gem tokens. But 6 months later, they were shut down because they actually didn't have a license for payments. But it's very interesting that this company apparently wants to come back and launch in markets like Indonesia and Malaysia. You can see on LinkedIn they have about 60 employees, which is quite a lot. Back 3 years ago, they raised about $20 million to launch that application. Now, if you look at the title of the article, it says the CEO of Lyka is plotting to enter these markets, and I think that's a very funny use of the word, but obviously the person who wrote that also implies that this is probably a Ponzi scheme to launch the way they did. They're only getting commission through the merchants that they sign off, and they haven't started advertising business on their app. So anyway, they were shut down. They want to relaunch the app. My point of view on this is that it's a good idea. It's definitely a kind of Ponzi scheme at the beginning because you're getting money from merchants, and then you put it back in the system to reward users. But eventually, at some point, it could become the future of social media because you can also get the users to start, selling NFTs and take a commission on that. You can get brands to also do advertising on the future platforms when you have critical mass. So, yeah, of course, you have to be doubtful when you give free money to people, but you can also think long-term about the possibilities there. Last but not least, China. I'm looking forward to go back to China. It's been 3 years I haven't been there. You may know or not know that I actually speak Chinese. I used to live there for 10 years. Some exciting things there. One, AI related, Baidu is also planning to launch their kind of ChatGPT China version with, of course, censorship and content curation that has to be implemented in China. But I thought this was a notable news to know what's happening, in the AI world there. Another interesting things in China, also regulation. And right after Chinese New Year, the regulators and the government announced that they are looking at regulating better NFTs and DAOs, the use of blockchain technology. And there are brands that already have a lot of NFTs in China. People say, oh, China doesn't do NFT, it's not in Web3. That's not true. There are a ton of digital collectibles in China. A brand like Huawei last week filed their trademarks in China for NFTs. The main difference is that you cannot trade these digital assets today. Now, we also know that Chinese New Year is just finished, like a week ago. And all the big giant tech companies in China, you're talking Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, they all have massive metaverse plans and also gaming and blockchain plans with digital assets involved in all these executions. Now, what we don't know for sure is what they're going to release first. What are the regulators going to say? Can these companies actually control the content that goes in there, control the speculation, if any? So China, definitely a lot will happen this year, and we will keep a close look on that. And I'm looking forward to go to China in the next couple of months as well. This is it for this week. There are more articles in the newsletter. Please subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube weekly video if you want to watch these. And I'll talk to you next week.